Hello, Frank Day here once again. Today I am doing something that I wrote up about 2 years ago, and I think it is relevant for this channel now. Today I'm doing a HPA 101 guide. Now what's that? It's just detailing what are the nuances of HPA for those of you who want to get into it and don't know where to start. Now, I had this HPA guide in text on Airsoft Underground, one of the servers that spawned from HopUp, but I want to put it in video form so you guys can get all the visuals. Now you can see here that I am at Jackal Tactical in Lebanon, PA, but more on them later. We're going to cover a lot of stuff like tanks, SLP, drop-ins, Polarstars, Wolverines, and all this other stuff that you guys will be interested in. Now, if I edited this right, you'll be able to see the chapters in the timeline below, and you can skip to what you need to get to. Anyways, before we get into this, I'd like to talk to you about my sponsor, Blowback Airsoft.
Great quality BBs at a reasonable price. Everything from 2.0s all the way up to 4.0s. 100% biodegradable, mixed tracer BB bottles from 2.0s to 3.2s, veteran owned and operated, and the best part, free shipping. Customers who buy 2 or more bottles at the same time get a bulk discount. If you're in need of resupply, swing by BlowbagAirsoft.com. Link in the description. How are you going to sling those Blowback BBs, you may ask? Well, you might have to pick something up from my local shop, Jackal Tactical. Jackal Tactical has all your airsofting needs. Everything from internals and attachments to essential gear to a wide selection of airsoft rifles and pistols. Great prices, friendly staff, and a wide selection. And a wide use selection. You don't need to go anywhere else. Swing by Jackal Tactical at 729 Walnut Street, Lebanon, PA, or at their ambush location at Ambush Adventure Park during airsoft walk-ons. Facebook is in the description.
Well now, let's just see if there's anything missing. Holy Jesus. What is that? What the f*** is that?
Now, what does HPA mean? HPA means high pressured air. Now, there's also a brand called HPA. They're high powered airsoft. They are not high pressured air. Just to get that distinction out of the way.
I'm driving too fast, I'm driving too far. I'd like to change my point of view. I feel so lonely, I'm waiting for you, but nothing ever happens. And I wonder how, I wonder why. Yesterday you told me about the blue, blue sky, and all that I can see is just a yellow lemon tree.
Now, for the core of any setup for an HPA gun, you need your tanks. Right here in my left hand is a 48 cubic inch 3000 psi tank, otherwise known as a 4830, and in my right hand I have a 68 cubic inch 45,000 psi, better known as a 6845. Now, what are the differences between these two tanks right here? Well, this one obviously holds 3,000 psi of pressure. This one holds 45,000 psi of pressure. Please note, do not fill a 3,000 psi tank on a 4,500 psi line, or else you could have a catastrophic failure. Now, you can fill 45,000 psi tanks on a 3,000 line, but you're not going to reach the capacity. Now, what are the major differences between these two tanks, apart from pressure and form factor? Well, there are two major things: the material that these tanks are made out of and the price. This tank right here is around $50 to $60. At Jackal Tactical, it's $55. Compared to this tank is in the realm of $160 to $210. This one in particular is $195. The material, this one is aluminum, so it is heavier than this carbon fiber tank. I'll probably put some stats right here so you guys can see the differences between these two tanks in regards to weight, how much air they can hold, and whatnot. one thing to note, this tank is a non-SLP tank. This tank is. Let's get into SLP next. Now, what does SLP mean? SLP means super low pressure. Now, how does that affect what tank you use? Well, in order to use a SLP regulator or reg, that you have to use a SLP tank. What are the differences between my 6845 tank compared to this 48 3000? Well, the output of an SLP tank is usually around 300 pounds per square inch, rather than regular output at 800 pounds per square inch PSI. Now, if you're to use this for, say, a Tippmann, which we will cover later in this video, that it may not perform optimally. So please make sure, if you're using that kind of HPA system, use a tank that has 800 PSI output. Also, for you paintballers, or for the 3 paintballers that decide to tune to this video, if you're using a paintball marker, do not use an SLP tank, use a regular paintball tank. So I'm filming this part at the last moment here. One thing I forgot to cover was hydro testing and hydro dating. What that is that the testing of a tank using water at very high pressures to make sure the tank is safe. Each tank has to do this every 5 years. Now, when is this determined? It is determined based on the birth date of the tank. As you can see here, I'll zoom in on this a little bit, or come closer to the camera. You can see all this DOT information on the tank. Right where my finger is pointing right here is the birth date of the tank. You can see 11/20. That is November of 2020. That is the birth date of the tank. Now, after November of 2025, I have to get this tank rehydroed. Generally, you want to rehydro carbon fiber tanks because they cost a lot of money, but aluminum tanks is going to cost you as much to hydro as to get a new tank, so it's not really worth it. Also, it is highly advisable not to use tanks that are out of hydro, as they could be dangerous to the user. I will show some examples in a moment of different hydro dates and if they're in hydro or not. Now, there are 2 different kinds of regs, SLP regs and non-SLP regs. Here I have a amped reg, and here I have a Redline Mini SFR super fast refresh. You know, just to spite you, I'm keeping that in. So, what are the differences between these 2 regs? This reg can only be used on SLP tanks. Compared to this reg can be used on any tanks. This isn't a video about amped versus redline. This is just a generalization between non-SLP and SLP. Now, to note, it does matter what tank you put an SLP reg on. You can only use an SLP reg with an SLP tank. If you use it on a regular tank, you could damage your reg. Compared to a non-SLP reg, you can use this on an SLP tank, a regular paintball tank, that it does not matter. You will not damage it based on the tank that you use. Now, what's the price difference between these 2 regs? This reg right here, it does come with a line that this can range anywhere from $75 to $100. This one in particular is $90 compared to this one, that non-SLP regs can range anywhere from $110 to $160, $170, depending on if it does come with a line or not, and depending on brand. That this one, I bought it a couple years ago, around $150 with a line. So, what is a line? a line connects your regulator to your gun. That these are both amped lines, that these run anywhere from $30 to $60 depending on the retailer or the version. This one I bought with the rag, so it was a little cheaper, but this one can be bought for $30 to $40 depending on that. Now this one is the limited edition BB Wars line from Amped, that I got this for $45 on a whim, and it's pretty cool. So that you can get different lines for different prices. Now the premium lines, I haven't really seen them out in the wild, so if you really need a premium line, it's up to you. The line goes into the reg right here that is screwed on top of the tank, that you use this QD fitting, and you can take the line out. Now how you would get this line connected to your gun is pretty simple. What you would do is hold on to the male end, put the female end, pull back the QD collar right here, and just make sure it's in and hold like that. You will usually hear a hiss. My tank is empty because I just bought it and I didn't get any air in it. And you're all set. That this line is connected to the gun. Alright, now we're going to talk about engines. Now what is an engine? An engine is what is inside of your gun that makes it HPA. This could be a Polarstar Jack, F1, F2, Fusion engine, or Kythera, a Wolverine SMP, Hydra, Inferno, or Reaper, or a ProTech, which I don't know what kind of models there are, a First Strike, or a Tippmann. Now these engines can be subdivided into two categories, electro-pneumatic and mechanical. What is the difference? Well, a mechanical engine does not utilize batteries, it only utilizes air pressure. However, a electro-pneumatic gun utilizes a small LiPo battery. Now, how big is an FCU battery? This big. And for reference, that they're not that big. That they can get stuffed in buffer tubes, hand guards, or just random places in the gun. That there is not a lot of room that you need for these batteries. Now, back to the debate. Mechanical versus electro-pneumatic. Well, that electro-pneumatic is good for easily setting your rate of fire, your dwell, and just about anything else. It is usually a lot easier to put into your gun if you go that route, and it is the most common way that people use HPA. Now, for mechanical, you don't need a battery, which is really nice if you're forgetful like me, or if you're running in colder climates. Second reason, the trigger pull is more realistic, which is really nice for people that want to train, but that it may be a little bit of a hassle if you want to do speed soft, so to say. And one of the pros for mechanical engines, you can get it wet, unlike electro-pneumatic. Now, what are the cons? Electro-pneumatic, your field's going to hate you. I have to stress this, that some fields have banned HPA because people set their ROF to 50 rounds per second, and they tend to make HPA banned. Also too, you're going to have to use a battery, which is going to suck if you forget to charge your battery, but you can use an FCU battery around 5 times for smaller games before you have to recharge it, which is nice, but with mechanical you don't have to worry about that. And lastly, you have to deal with a bunch of electronics, which if you get your gun wet, unless if you have like one of the Spartan boards that are, well, Wolverine Spartan boards that are waterproof, you're SOL. Mechanical, the disadvantages. Usually mechanical engines, they're semi-only, apart from the Tippmann and the First Strike, that we'll get into those later. Also, if you get a Tippmann, the FPS is a lot harder to tune compared to a electro-pneumatic. Electro-pneumatic, you would just tune the rag. Tippmanns, you actually have to open up the gun. Now, Kytheras, they work exactly the same as electro-pneumatic with adjusting PSI output, so you don't have to worry about that with the Kythera, and actually the Reaper M as well. And lastly, mechanical. You have a lot more moving parts compared to electro-pneumatic, so the wear and tear is going to be more. And for Tippmanns, the recoil could ruin the rear eye holes for the upper receiver, so they will shear off and they are casted into the upper. So once the rear eye holes are done, you either have to zip tie the upper receiver shut, or you have to basically throw the gun out and keep the lower. I also did forget to mention Daytona guns. They're basically gas blowback conversions to use AEG mags, and they're pretty cool. The recoil's awesome. It's just they're super expensive. A base model Daytona gun is going to run you $1,000. Now for electro-pneumatic, I have a Classic Army HK53, pretty rare, with a Wolverine SMP inside, that you would use this to connect your air up. What is this? This is commonly known as a grip line or an IGL. Wolverine has a certain version called an FGL. It's basically the same thing, just different wording, and this will connect right into your engine. Now, since this is electro-pneumatic, you have to adjust your settings somewhere. That in this particular gun, not every gun, this particular gun, you can adjust your FCU, otherwise known as a fire control unit, right here. Right here. Now, I'm not a big expert with Polarstar FCUs. If you want to check out a video in tuning Polarstar FCUs, I'll probably find one and throw in the link in the description. Now for this FCU, it's pretty simple. One dial is dwell, and the other one is rate of fire. Now, we already went over rate of fire. What's dwell? Now, dwell is the amount of distance your nozzle has to move in order to chamber the next round. Now, you want to have a little bit more dwell when it's cold, and less dwell when it's hot. Preferably, that you want to have as little dwell as possible, so then your FPS is lower and your pressure usage is lower. Now, that you would plug your FCU battery in here. What is this? This is JST. I don't know what it stands for, but it's called a JST plug. We have no air on set right now, but all you have to do is plug your FCU battery in like so, and you're all set. If you want to test your gun without air, you can make sure that it shoots. I'm going to put it on semi. You can make sure, or you can hear the solenoid going to make sure that your gun is all set up properly. Semi. And full auto. Now, why is the full auto so low on this gun? Is because I don't want to be that kind of guy. So I have it set to 11. Plus also the real one is kind of that slow firing, so. So anywho, this is an example of a gun with a drop-in HPA unit.
Of course it's a good idea. Behold, Arthur, this is the Holy Grail. Look well, Arthur, for it is your sacred task to seek this Grail. That is your purpose, Arthur.
Now, not every HPA gun needs to be built by yourself, even though that is the preferred method. Right here I have my own Wolverine MTW. Inside it has a Wolverine Inferno engine. Now, for Wolverines, they're pretty simple to get the battery in. You pull out the rear pin right here, and it breaks open like a real AR-15. Make sure this line goes into the pistol grip. Pull out your wire to the FCU, plug your battery in. Stuff the battery in the buffer tube. And close the upper to the lower, and then pin in. And you can tune this particular FCU to however you want. How I have it is I have it set to safe on safe, semi on semi, and on full auto, the 3-round burst. Now, if you don't pull down the trigger fully on these bursts for these MTWs, you can get 1 2-shot bursts. Now, that pictured on the screen now, you can see all the FCU settings for the Wolverine MTW and the Spartan board, because the Spartan board is in the MTW, but it is a real pain to tune everything on this gun. And I'll go over it real quick without tuning my own gun. Firstly, what you have to do in order to adjust your ROF and dwell is to open up the gun. Just make sure that your battery is disconnected for step 1. Step 2, switch it to semi-auto and hold down the trigger. Step 3, connect the battery, which is done like that. And this is one weird balancing act. Now, here's a trick. Step 4, do not hit the retaining, or do not use the retaining pin. Just close the receiver like yay. And now you are in diagnostic mode. That when you pull the trigger, it's delayed until after you release the trigger. And you would hold down the trigger to adjust your dwell. On semi, switch it to full, and you will see that is bursting a little bit. You will hold down the trigger to adjust your ROF this way. Now, if you were to adjust your firing mode, what you would do, repeat the process, step 1, step 2, but keep the gun open, and you use semi to adjust your firing mode.
No. You gotta go like this.
Alright, so I just finished an unboxing video, and I'm sorry for the sparse room, but we gotta make do. So anyway, what I wanted to do for this segment is talk about the Tippmann. So I Gucci this one out. I have a Geyser rail, BCM grip, Magpul stock. This is actually getting sent out to be sold tomorrow, but I want to do a quick piece to camera to it before I say arrivederci. So, what's up about this gun? Well, that this is a 100% mechanical HPA system. Now, I'm at a weird part of my life where all my stuff is scattered across like 2 or 3 places, so I don't have my HPA tank. But what I do have is the line. So, with the Tippmann, that it takes 800 PSI straight output from the tank directly into the gun. Unlike regular Polarstars or gas blowbacks where you need to regulate it down to 120 or even 80 PSI, this takes 800 PSI. Forgot this part. So this has an angled adapter so it can accept the tank directly in it, but I also have the tank adapter so you could throw the line in. So what you would do is you would first, before doing anything, in this order, this is important, if you have this kind of line. Now there are quick detach lines, but I do not have a quick detach line. You would first put the QD fitting in. I know I said this is not a quick detach, but it's slightly different. Then next, if I had a tank on, I would use the side check here and turn it on. And this will push the pin on the tank in, and this will start feeding air into the gun. To start the gun up, it's like a Tippmann 98 Custom. You just pull back on the charging handle, and it is ready. That there are 3 modes. There is safe, where you can pull the trigger, but nothing happens. There's semi, which would be that. And then there's full auto, which I'll probably throw a video up here. Now I got plenty of gameplay, not with this gun, but with Tippmanns in general on my channel. So if you want to go back to 2018 to about 2020, you'll see a lot of gameplay with this. What I like about these guns is that the recoil is realistic. It's about 22, or it feels like a 22. It's loud, and that you can adjust the RF pretty good. One of the best parts about the Tippmann is that it takes standard AEG mags You heard that right, standard AEG mags for basically a gas blowback system with HPA. You get everything that you want. I've seen people run this gun, not this specific gun, but run Tippmanns with drum bags and everything. So magazine compatibility is not that bad. That you could fit most brand mags in this and it will feed. Funny enough that the Tippmann does have an anti-jam system inside of it, which is really nice. The only real downside about this gun is the HopUp. Now, you adjust the HopUp with this screw right here, where my finger is. That this is a Gen 1 Tippmann, Gen 2 Tippmanns, they would have a TDC HopUp, which means top dead center. So, you would adjust it through here. Now, there are mods for Gen 1 Tippmanns to have a TDC HopUp, but it's a long and tedious process to do. That's why I send my guns to Jackal Tactical to get teched on, and they're wizards over there, so they know what they're doing. Now, unlike most other HPA guns, that you would adjust everything inside the gun. So, pushing this pin, the back pin right here, like a real AR, will reveal this, the entire innards of it. Now this gun was built from the ground up as HPA. What you would do here, this screw right here, this is to adjust your rate of fire. It can go anywhere between 5 and 20, and you can even get buffer tube spacers to make it go up to 30 or even 35, which is really nice. Where my finger is right here on the upper is your velocity screw. Now I'm probably gonna correct myself in post. Backing it out is more velocity and screwing it in is less.
Correct!
Your buffer spring lives here, and that you will, if you need to change anything with the buffer spring, you would have to finagle with this. And the silver thing is your bolt. This goes back and forth and hits the buffer tube spring. Now, one thing you do have to be aware of with these Tippmanns, is these two back tabs, that over time they could possibly break, and there's no real solution to it, that it will eventually break, and it is casted into the upper, so you would have to find an entirely new upper. And it is quite possible that we haven't heard any news from Tippmann lately, that they're probably out of business, so there's probably a limited supply of uppers floating around, so eventually that these guns will not be able to play anymore in, say, 20 to 30 years. But for right now, we might as well enjoy the recoil and the cool factor of this gun. Anyway, for this segment, I am at Downfall 8 at EMR Event Park in New Milford, Pennsylvania, that someone was generous enough to let me borrow his Kythera. Sweets, you might know him from the Chapter 3 of the Rev video. He did that sweet voiceover. Anyway, Sweets let me borrow his Kythera for this segment. So, a Kythera is a mechanical engine that is like an N7 milsim, except a Kythera has a sear in it, unlike the pilot valve and N7 milsim. Sometimes it's more efficient to put the tank in the stock for some mechanical engines because you don't have to worry about an FCU, you don't have to worry about battery, and they're pretty air efficient. So without the need for an FCU or a battery, you can just throw this in your bag and go, which is awesome. Unlike the Tippmann, the Kythera and the N7 milsim are just drop-in units. You would screw it into your gearbox and then you can just go. That there's no need to worry about proprietary parts like a gas blowback or a Tippmann HPA M4. Anyway, the Kythera is a closed bolt mechanical system. So the first shot will be a dry fire and the second shot will be the BB itself. This makes the gun pretty quiet. Sweets added this sweet can on here. It's an average can, right? I had this average can on here, and with the stock baffles and the stock configuration, this thing is pretty silent when it's shooting, that you could barely hear it when I'm dry firing it here. Anyway, mechanical HPA systems that are not the Tippmann or a gas blowback are great for DMR builds, as we have here, that it's single shot. Most field or milsim events only allow DMRs as single shots, and it just makes the system a lot more easy to use.
Hey!
Yeah?
What the hell is this?
Now, since we covered electro-pneumatic engines and mechanical engines, let's talk about something that I didn't mention yet. Gas blowback conversions. These will fall under the realm of mechanical engines, but they're not really HPA in the sense of having to drop in an engine into a gun. They're just fed with high-pressured air rather than green gas. For example, I have my Mach 11 KWA. Now, if I wanted to run HPA with this gun, all I would have to do, as you can see right here, that there's a green gas fill valve. I would just swap this out and use a HPA tap. Now, what is an HPA tap? Well, it's one of these. I'll come a little closer so you guys can see. Now, what does this do? This screws into the green gas fill valve and allows you to run HPA into the gun compared to green gas. This is good for colder climates, or if you want to save money, instead of running cans and cans and cans
1 hour later.
and cans of green gas. Now, what are the main disadvantages of using an HPA tapped gas blowback gun? Well, first off, you have to use the mag that comes or is compatible with the gun, which means you have to buy a mag and the tap, so it is not like an AEG mag. You have to actually buy separate mags, and they only carry between 15 to 50 rounds. So, and lastly, that these are mechanical, so you have to lube them every single time you use them, or a lot of time, which... Now, what are the advantages? Well, if you want to use a gas blowback gun and it's cold, or you don't want to spend money for green gas, it's a lot cheaper to run HPA with a gas blowback gun. Secondly, that you get realistic recoil with HPA still. And lastly, if you want to run green gas mags and HPA at the same time, all you have to do is just swap the mag.
They looking for the shooter!
Now, I didn't cover two things with HPA, but I do want to bring them up briefly. First off, HPA sniper rifles, they basically have the pull of a 22, and they can either be mechanical or electro-pneumatic. It depends on the gun itself. Secondly, the minigun. I'm looking at one right now, but I don't want to touch it because it's not mine. Now, the one thing that you can change on your gun pretty easily for HPA is your barrel and HopUp. This will include your inner barrel, your HopUp, and your bucking, and your nub. I personally go with a Promi inner barrel, Promi purple, ProWin HopUp, or you can go with Edgy 601 with an R-Hop patch, a G&G green shaved down for flat hop, and a Max HopUp with the flat hop nub. Now, those are my recommendations for two barrel setups with HPA, but you can always experiment and get other barrel setups that work better for you.
Uncle Roger said now.
Now, for everything with HPA, how much is it going to cost you? Well, now, to get an HPA, you're going to need a line, tank, and reg. That can range anywhere in total from $150 to over $300, depending on if you get SLP or not. We covered that earlier in the video. With that, the cheapest way, gun-wise, to get an HPA is you can use your pre-existing gas blowback gun and get a HPA tap. That'll cost you $15 per tap, which will be cheaper than dropping in an engine, but you're going to have to deal with a tap for each and every single mag. And also, you're going to have to change your line out every single time you reload. You can see this in this video right here. Now, the second from the cheapest way to get an HPA is to get a First Strike or a Tippmann. Your performance is not going to be the best, but you're going to have recoil and it'll be HPA. However, you can get a TDC mod, which I did mention prior, and it'll work pretty well. Now your third option would be a drop-in HPA unit like is in this gun. Now, it's going to cost you anywhere from $280 to $550, $600, depending on how much the fusion engine is. I'll put it right here. And also, you're either going to have to get a tech. Now, Jackal Tactical does do HPA upgrades, or you can install it yourself. Now, my recommendation is to get a broken or boneyard gun and HPA that rather than taking a good working gun and HPAing it, because why break something that isn't broken? My SR25 Kythera build was around $225. Now please note that the inflation wasn't as bad as it was now 2 years ago, so that the price is lower. It'll probably cost you around $625 now. This gun will probably cost you about $600 in total, and if you were to get a fusion engine, that price would be a lot higher. Now, you can always get a new inner barrel HopUp and bucking to fluctuate the price that way. Now, one of the last ways to get in the HPA is just buy an MTW. That I got this for $710 at Jackal Tactical in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, and you don't need to change anything on this gun in order for it to perform well. Oh, okay, you're going to have to change the HopUp and your dwell, but you don't have to change anything else after that. And this also takes regular AEG mags. Most drop-in units take AEG mags. I hope this video was some help to you. You can help me out by liking and commenting on the video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the bell icon for the latest and greatest content. And I'll see you around, guys.